When we're kids, we sit down at a certain point, with permission or maybe without permission, with a family album, photo album, snapshots. And the snapshots become our memories. We may not remember our third birthday. We may not remember the hot dogs we had at the beach when we were 8. But there's a photograph. And through repetition, the photograph becomes the visual memory. It's retained in memory. And then you ask yourself, well, is this true or is it false? Or how much of this is true and how much of this is false? How much of this is implanted? How much of this is spontaneously recollected? And I think the case can be made about these images that they are both true and false, that they are both made to convince and also to bear witness. There's hope and deceit, and it's entirely willful. And these images, looked at one way, are simply quaint, charming forms of gaiety, testaments to leisure or unselfconscious delight. If looked at another way, are complex counterfeits, tragic and also, I don't know what, ecstatic. There's a sweetness and there's also just a sadness to it. We believe that, the world didn't exist before we were born, or the world vanish after we die. And what these images or any historical or archival image does is convince us that even before we blinked our eyes for the first time and breathed the air, the first lungful, there was a world, and that world had a substantial presence without us. And that's humbling. So time travel is absolutely correct. I think that's the power of all imagery, all historical photography. It allows us to move somersault backwards in memory. It allows us to somersault backwards in history. It allows us that brief sort of illusion, optical, neurological, that we are inside of the frame. And these are very convincing because they were made with the most advanced optical and photographic and reproductive technologies available. So they're very, very convincing illusions. At a certain point in your infancy or childhood, your brain's receptive to saturated color, and it completely changes you and imprints something on you. And I had that same sort of experience in Denver, looking at the color stuff that they had of Detroit Publishing. There was a real wonderful purity and glossy transparency and intensity to the imagery that astonished me. So I think, in terms of epiphanies, that is a color epiphany. What I have an interest in these images, and what provides whatever kind of epiphany, if you will, is the space, the openness, the clarity, the sort of stability, ease, grace, assurance, grandeur, monumentality, all based upon what was once called the luxury of space. They carried tacit assumptions, implicit, nonverbal, tacit understandings of the way the world worked, was supposed to work, could work, might work, will work, has worked, ought to work. It's all coiled inside of those images. And the fact that these things were sold broadly over decades means that these illusions, hopes, dreams, tacit assumptions, explicit declarations, claims, and assumptions are being passed around year after year, again and again and again. It simply is an affirmation of collective consciousness. These are mass images produced for a mass market. This is ordinary Americans, middle-class Americans, municipalities, white-collar people, professionals, passing these ideas back and forth to each other without even thinking, in a kind of jocular, pleasant, complacent way. And that's what's also wonderful about them. The images are sort of like that moment after a very deep, clean knife cut. You don't feel anything at all, but you're changed forever. What I have an interest in is these images as telltales, as psychological documents, as things that reveal collective states of mind, and also reveal something about the mastermind, the photographer, William Henry Jackson.